Hi, so this is the analysis of episode 2 of Black Mirror Season 3, Playtest, or Call Mom. And I do want to quickly apologise that I didn't spoiler warn for last week. This is your spoiler warning for this and the further, and the next few videos as well. I'm obviously assuming you'll have watched it before you watch an analysis. And obviously Call Mom should be apparent to people if you've seen it. So I thought this one didn't seem quite as Black Mirror-y to me, but maybe that's because my idea of Black Mirror is slightly different, maybe. But I didn't think there was really a social analysis in it, which I think is what Black Mirror does quite well. But it's an interesting hour of television, basically. Either way, I still enjoyed it. I still thought about it. It gave me ideas, and obviously I've still made notes and analysed it. But as I say, I think it wasn't quite Black Mirror-y, but still a good episode. So first of all, we have our protagonist, really. I wouldn't call him a hero. But Cooper, who, I didn't realise the first time, again, so much has come from watching again to really analyse properly. But he seems to be sneaking away, which does make sense, obviously, in context. He's very kind of secretively kind of trying to get away from his mum, really, which I can understand, obviously if life's difficult there. So it's just one of those things that I really kind of noticed the second time around. But this is a good episode for kind of bringing in ideas that'll then come in later on. Like, I was warned, because I am an arachnophobe, by Amy, that there are sort of spiders and spidery things. So kind of I was prepared for that. So anytime there was a spider on screen, I was hyper aware, even on the first watching. But I did notice, obviously, the film he watches on the plane, there's a spider in that. There's a guy, when he actually goes to Saito Gemu, who's wearing a t-shirt with a spider on. And there are all these different things like that sort of layer themselves through that suddenly come into effect later. And I thought that was great. That's really well done. From a directorial standpoint, and from, like, I suppose the planning and everything like that, it's really clever to have those elements in. And obviously he talks about Josh Peters being a bully for him, so obviously he's going to be the tall guy later on. I call him, I don't know why I said the tall guy, I was probably thinking the tall man, from the Phantasm series, which is great. That's a whole separate thing. I might review Ravager at least at some point. But anyway, obviously he's introduced, obviously the Alzheimer's thing when he talks about his father, which obviously comes into effect later on. And obviously spiders come in, and all these different things, again, back to the whole kind of thing of like introducing these elements that would come into effect later on. But a couple of little funny asides before we go into more serious subject matter of the episode. One, I like the fact that it's like, can you think of anything fun to do? And apparently she is something fun to do by that logic. And I don't like Marmite. When he says, like, you guys eat this, no. It's a 50-50 split, pretty much. It's love or hate with Marmite, in case you didn't know. And I am on the hate side, although I do like Twiglets, which are flavoured with basically yeast extract. I'm a walking contradiction. But anyway, back to the episode. So obviously throughout the episode, there's this thing where his mum's constantly trying to get in touch with him, which is obviously where I've come up with the idea of Call Mom. And obviously at the end of the episode we see like Called Mom. So it's almost like they're kind of like, yeah, that's the alternative title. And if you think about it, so much of the episode could have been avoided if he'd have just spoken to his mum. Like, when right from the start, and then his cards skimmed, and like obviously his account's cleared out pretty much. He could have called Mum, but instead he called Sonia. Because obviously she could have wired him money, he could have been back in America, he would have never been in that position, and there's so much that could have been done by just calling home. And obviously when he's in Sonia's flat, or whatever, it's quite interesting. They mention obviously Harlock Shadow, and obviously the house he's in later. You know, it's like, this is the Harlock Shadow house. You know, which again, as we know later on, that was all in his head as well. You know, the fact is that was introduced as well. Like, all these ideas have kind of seeded themselves in his brain. Even when he's going through Saito Gaming, at the headquarters before he's taken into the house, the black clothed guy is on a monitor in there. You know, there's a computer monitor, and that guy's there. So obviously these elements have all sort of been picked up, I guess, in his subconscious, and that's what's kind of led to them sort of being out there. But it's quite interesting, sort of, when you look at the episode, you know, and like, obviously watching the first time, you know, the phone rings when, like, obviously it should have been turned off, and it's like, oh, that should have been turned off, I thought I'd turn that off, you know, all that kind of stuff. But from that moment, you know, it's all been in his head. As soon as that call's come in, that's all in his head. Like the rest of the episode, it all loops back, and I will get back to, if you will, like the sort of Inception level, I guess, of different layers that were in effect here, I guess, towards the end of the video. But I did find that quite interesting. You know, when you sort of look at it again, it's like, so everything from there is all in his head. He's made all that up somehow, and obviously she does show him Saito on the cover of the Edge magazine, so he obviously got him in his head, and it does make sense that, you know, he'd know what he looked like, because he never met him, if you remember. You know, from that moment in, like, the white walled room where he's doing, like, the whack-a-mole game, you know, that's all in his head. He'd never actually met Saito, so, but he was in his head because obviously he'd seen him in magazines, you know. Again, I think there's a few asides that I've kind of got for this, but I get the impression that Saito's kind of almost like a Hideo Kojima kind of thing. I mean, you see him with a V in front of him, which obviously Metal Gear Solid 5, both Ground Zeroes and The Phantom Pain, were kind of his last things, you know, under Konami, and he's a very kind of weird kind of guy who's got great ideas and would probably do something like this, be like, how can we really get into people's heads? And obviously PT was created as, you know, as an idea of getting into people's heads quite a lot, so I think it is meant to be a parallel, but carrying on anyway. So obviously when he's in the Harlock Shadow house, which again is all in his head, one of the things that, again, second watching, noticed, he's reading The Raven, the great Edgar Allan Poe tale, one of my favourites, well, poem, I guess. But something suddenly came back to my mind. Again, that's all in his head. He's not sitting there reading The Raven at any point. But he met Sonia in the Raven Inn. We actually saw the kind of lampshade with the, the light fixture with the words on the side, you know, sort of saying the Raven Inn. And I found that quite an interesting thing, because obviously he might have picked that up subconsciously, or obviously, you know, I'm guessing that they arranged to meet there, so he'd have been looking for it. So the Raven's something that's in his mind. Now, this is where I start to discuss, like, the kind of psych outs and, I guess, the Inception kind of, you know, layers, if you will, of reality. When the static kind of was cutting, you know, and Katie's kind of speaking to him, and it was cutting out and stuff like that, and obviously couldn't hear anymore, and, you know, I was like, I don't think that's real. But I thought it was not real in the sense of, like, it was all part of the game, if you will, like the way they were testing him. And also when Sonia appeared, I was like, okay, you can touch her, which is weird, because you're not meant to be able to touch things, but I suppose if he's highly susceptible, maybe he's, like, able to believe that he's touching her. And then obviously the big drawn out fight and a face coming off and stuff like that. It's not very pleasant. But, you know, I was like, this is all part of something. You know, it's all part of that. It can't be otherwise. And I thought it was quite kind of, you know, I kind of ruin things for myself. I'm not as good as some people I know. But I do sometimes ruin things for myself because I constantly second guess. But I found it kind of a fun game with this. It's like, I don't think that's real. I don't think that's real. I don't think that's real. And there was an interesting thought I had with, like, the Spider Peters, as I'm calling him, and sort of Sonia not being herself, kind of, we're almost like themselves, although obviously, you know, he's got the issue with like Josh Peters from his past and fear of spiders, I did feel that this kind of like dehumanizing of them was almost like also a manifestation of the depersonalization that comes from Alzheimer's, because it is one of those things, you know, where you kind of lose who you are to a degree, and the people around you obviously have to just watch you as you're no longer you, and you don't even realise, you know, not even realising that the people around you are them. So I thought maybe there was an element of that, you know, this kind of depersonalisation could be another layer from that, if you will. Yeah, so I thought, you know, it was quite interesting. There's a little idea, you know, that maybe that was all of the fears coming into one weird kind of conglomeration, I guess. But I didn't find it, I mean, there are a lot of good kind of little hints that were even quite surface level, like when she's sort of saying, you know, he needs to get to the access point when she suddenly comes back online, or supposedly comes back online, tells him to go one more level. Obviously that's a classic, you know, kids who grew up with games like in the 80s and stuff, you know, it was what we'd always say to our parents, like, come on, it's time for your dinner, or one more level, you know. So I thought that's a bit on the nose, and I did spot, I'm assuming it was intentional, a would you kindly reference. Katie said, "Would you kindly open the door?" And I'm like, that's some Bioshock stuff right there. That is Bioshock through and through. So if that was intentional, well done. If it wasn't, good happy accident. But I mean, it was quite interesting as well, because it's like, you know, there's personal stuff coming. You know, something's mentioned about sort of personal things will be on the other side of the door, if you will. And it's quite interesting because they kind of bring in the depersonalization with Alzheimer's, but also bring in the idea that maybe they're neurologically programming him, almost like ripping away sense of self. It's not a disease that you can kind of point to and explain and go, well, one day we might beat it. This is like stripping him directly of it, you know, and it was quite sad. It was really quite sad. But then obviously you get the no, it's not real, you know, and goes home obviously to his mum. You know, but then obviously she seems to be showing similar kind of things of Alzheimer's. She doesn't realise he's Cooper, and she's like, she needs to call him. And then we get the big reveal, and as I say, that was really sad as well. I was really touched by that. I mean, I've never, you know, had any sort of direct dealings, if you will, with that kind of situation, but I can empathise and sympathise how horrible it must be just from reading things, watching things, and researching. I've even done a song about Alzheimer's, which one day I may release. But as I say, it was quite sad, you know, like when they said, you know, we can't stop it for when he's having the situation, and quite sad when his mum's just there going, I need to call Cooper. It's like, I'm here, you know, and you can really sort of feel that. But because they'd had so many kind of fake outs, I guess, you know, false endings, psych outs, whatever you want to call them, I didn't actually see that the whole thing from that first call was basically in his brain as he was having neural overload, if you will. And that really got me. I was like, whoa, wait, the whole thing wasn't, none of that was real. From the point that he's like, from the point that he sat down, you know, and like, she came back in and then the phone went off, everything from that point was in his head. So he's imagined what this technology is. He's imagined all that stuff. And that was interesting to me, you know, the fact that, because obviously they do say, sort of when you're, you know, near the moment of death, time stretches kind of weirdly, and maybe that's the case, you know, it's like, it was barely even a second. But I did think it's quite interesting. I mean, I was kind of like, well, you know, surely the point of the episode is, yeah, call your mom, you know, keep in contact with your family. I'm not perfect for it, but I do try it as, you know, as much as I can. But Amy really pointed this one out to me. Hubris. Not just the name of the comics company in the Fallout universe, but the idea that, you know, nothing's gonna beat you, if you will. You know, you're above everything, because the only precaution that was taken was turn the phone off, mainly so that really they didn't get, I think, anyone taking pictures and stuff. That's really what they wanted. But the thing that caused the problem was the interference from a wireless signal, you know, from basically radio waves interfering. Now, I don't know how the technology works with the implants and stuff, but she's obviously got a laptop there, which I'm guessing, is networked in. Hardline networking, and you could have like a lead-lined room basically, so that no radio signals could come in and interfere, and you've got a hard line going into the laptop, so that's fine. You're not running the risk. So it is almost perhaps a sense of hubris that they didn't correctly or really appropriately shield the environment to prevent things like that happening. So that really spoke to me. I was like, oh yes, of course, that's what it is. It's this whole idea that if they would have been more careful, it wouldn't have happened anyway. But I still stand by my first belief, though. If he'd have called his mum, none of it would have happened. So maybe this is a bit of a wake-up call to people, Keep in contact with your family. You only get one. And, I mean, obviously, yeah, if you've got terrible parents, that's obviously a separate issue, and I'm not going to say that you should try and get in touch with them. But obviously, if you've got parents who care about you, show that love back. This is a bit more of an uplifting kind of hopeful ending, and maybe like a recommendation, rather than just a full analysis of an episode. But I do stand by it. It's you only get one family. But until next time, as always, take care.